what are the consequences of not having content writers? And I kind of know what you're going to say, and I'm a little antsy and excited, but like I know there's some juicy ones, and a lot of people have not figured this out. They know content's important, and they've bought sales engagement. They've got this powerful engine now to really go after and execute their process, and then what, right? Like what are the consequences of not having it, or not having too much of it?
Yeah, well, I think the number one problem that I would expect is low adoption of the content that's in your sales engagement platform. So if your reps aren't consulted, and your reps don't have a chance to raise their hands and say, I would never send this out to my prospects ever. If they don't have the chance to say that and they're not consulted during the process, they're not going to adopt the content. And again, like we talked about in the beginning, you're not going to get the insights that you want out of your sales engagement platform. And so a writer is very, very important to be kind of that front line of making sure that when the reps see the content, they like it and they're able to use it and that everything goes to plan. I think another thing, if you don't have, especially a consistent content writer, one of the things I say about sales content writing a lot is that it tends to be an aside of everyone's job. You have an analyst, you have someone to help you with implementation, you have someone setting metrics, you have management, you have end users, and then at the end of all of that, you're just about ready to go and people say, oh, right, we need content. And then it's just kind of like everyone just pitch in and write content and throw it in there and we'll see what happens. And I think what that does over time is that the content doesn't really follow a set of best practices that have been gathered by running experiments and gathering data. So for example, the emails will be way too long. Some of them will be, the correct length, just a few sentences, 5 or 6 sentences is usually what we say is best. But, without failure, when we go into an instance that has more than, 50 or 60 sequences, it's always true that there's going to be an email in there that has chunky paragraphs with like 10 lines, and you think about someone reading that on a cell phone, and I think, if you had a dedicated content writer, that would never happen. So I think that's really important too, or the content will use too many buzzwords, or another thing that happens too is that there's misalignment between what your leadership wants the go-to-marketing messaging to be and then what the reps are actually saying, and that misalignment goes unnoticed. And then later down the line, it's a lot harder to correct if it's been going on for a long time.
Yeah, I could totally see that. One last question before we end the video here. If you're a leader, how best can you support your content writers?
I think just to help them make sure that they can get enough face time with the right people. I think one of the challenges that we run into a lot when we go in and try to write content is we'll be, sort of in our discovery and proposal phase, and we'll say, okay, we need this many meetings of this duration with these people because of these reasons. And then as soon as we, the deal gets signed, we go in and we start writing. Inevitably, a manager or a VP will come back and say, oh, well, does this have to be a 60-minute meeting? Couldn't we do, a 30-minute roundtable with everyone? And so it's really important to understand that the content writer is an expert in writing and in best practices and in strategy. But your reps are really the experts in their prospects and the prospect's pain and what is helpful for their sales cycle. And leadership is really the expert in the go-to-market messaging strategy. The writer, especially from an agency perspective, or especially if it's someone else who has a primary function on the team that's not content writing, they can't possibly be expected to know all of that stuff better than everyone else. And so if you're not letting the content writer get face time with the subject matter experts, you're really prolonging the process and tanking your adoption, because they're not actually going to be able to get it right the first time unless they have the right amount of time with the right people.
Good stuff as always from Erica Davis. Appreciate it, Erica.